All right, thank you so much for joining us. You are part of our 4th session of the Colorado Restaurant and Bar Show educational series. You've joined us for Takeout or Bust, case studies and how to build a successful to-go business from scratch. We'll give it just a moment for everybody to join us here, and then we'll have Laura Shunk, the CRA Communication Director, kick things off. So let's give it just a minute. All right, Laura, if you'd like to take it from here.
All right, thank you everyone for joining us for the 4th session of our 2020 Colorado Restaurant and Bar Show virtual education series. We created this series because we know that the COVID-19 pandemic is the most challenging crisis the restaurant industry has encountered in living memory. We know that you are wondering, after a crushing shutdown and a tenuous summer, how are you going to survive the winter? This series is really about trying to answer that question. In weekly sessions, we've been featuring industry experts who can dig into operational best practices to give practical, implementable ideas that you can immediately apply to your own business. If you've joined us before, thank you for doing that. If you haven't, we've done some series on financial operations, on outdoor patio space. You can find all of that within our event app. There's links to those webinars if you'd like to go back and revisit them. Today's panel covers best practices for building a takeout program from the ground up. We'll begin by having Drew Frank, sales manager at Western Paper Distributors, discuss keys to delivery operational success, and Michael Mueller, sales team lead for the Rocky Mountain region at Toast, detail best practices for setting up online ordering to drive more sales. Then Aaron Palmer, brand director of Frasca Hospitality Group, and Josh Wolkin, the founder of Secret Sauce Food and Beverage, will dig into their successful bids to build a takeout business from scratch this year in their restaurants. Before we start the discussion, I'd like to thank our session sponsor, PepsiCo. With us today is Miles Berry, the Senior Key Account Manager for the Colorado market. He will start us off with some great data about how beverage to go can improve your takeout business. If you have any questions, please use the Q&A function in the bottom menu of your Zoom window. We'll be posting the recording of the discussion in about 24 hours in the CRB Show Education Series event app. Please let me add that over the course of the next several weeks of this series, we'll cover a number of topics, including additional revenue streams, social media, crisis communication, labor law, and more. Join us for one session, all sessions, or anything in between. You can sign up for the series on Event Cadence and stay tuned for more details. Without further ado, I'll turn it over to Miles.
Good afternoon. Hope everybody's having a good day. I'm going to talk about the impact of bottles to go on your business and the opportunity that's in front of you there. So all the data shows us that more and more folks are opening up to the thought of on-premise dining, and it's actually up over the last month and a half here. But what it still shows us is that 49% of folks are still avoiding eating out. So, and 30% of the folks that are interested in dining is still kind of iffy, right? They're on the fence. They're still going out, but they're very cautious about that. So maybe they're not dining out as often as they might be. So really, when I looked at this data, it really told me that 80% of consumers are still pretty cautious about what they're doing. And in a lot of cases, they're deciding to make that off-premise. Bottles to go impact. So when we look at expanding the B&C portfolio to drive that beverage incidence, it's not just about adding the option of beverages, but there's a couple key points to go along with that. But we did a case study with an operator specifically looking at what they added into a bottle to go program. And they ended up selling 2 cases a week at $3.50, which really for operators such as yourself, it's almost $9,000 a year in revenue. So when we look at that data, it really tells us that it was incremental to what they already had in place. The other part of that was really offering a bundle. So it wasn't just putting the beverage on the digital platform, but it was also being able to offer some sort of promotion. So in this case, it was a lunch combo, but certainly you can do it with a meal. You can add appetizers, you can add dessert, but promoting that offering was really important. And to follow that up, what we also found was that when we initially started that, it actually groomed the consumer to look for those same offerings that they chose in the past. And it drove almost a 90% repurchase rate. So when they were buying that lunch combo, that was what they looked for each time as they were going back in to order that something new at the account, that it actually drove that repurchase of that same promotion. I'll skip this page, but basically it answers some of that. So adding value to your meal offerings. So it was really driven around highlighting your food with that beverage. And it doesn't have to be, obviously, my focus is on PepsiCo brands, but to be honest, what we also found was that driving alcohol sales and dessert sales were also key to having a promotion and really promoting that on the digital platform, but also having in business POS that really drove that, so that when they came in to pick up, they also saw that there was an opportunity to do those things the next time they went online to order. And you know, a lot of folks were still hesitant to get online, and this helped them see that there's opportunities there. Just some digital examples here. Really shows the food item with the beverage, but what we also found is really having the bottles, the actual images of what you're selling was very impactful. It wasn't just to list it as a soda, but also to show an image of what those opportunities were. Really helped consumers make decisions that they could not just get a carbonated soft drink, but a healthy sparkling water or something else that you might want to put with that. As an example here, as I mentioned, alcohol sales as well. That was something, right? So a 4-pack, they tied it into really any of their bottles to go is what they were tying it into. And that's really all I had to present for you today. I think, again, it's critical that you do look at that digital platform, because I think that's what the consumers are really getting comfortable with. I did put on a QR code here, so if you have questions about products and service, you can scan that. Or there's also a link here if you're interested in our beverage opportunities. So thanks for your time today. Appreciate that. And I'll hand it over to Drew.
Thanks, I appreciate it. We'll get our PowerPoint going. So my name's Drew Frank. I'm with Western Paper. We're a leading supplier of food service packaging, cleaning supplies in our region. And we're really focused on helping local restaurants drive to-go revenue. To-go is no longer this necessary evil that a lot of businesses were kind of dabbling in. With COVID, it's become a part of the revenue stream. And so I'm going to go over some of the best practices that we're seeing as to how to drive successful revenue with your to-go program. So the first thing we're going to talk about is product integrity. The most important thing as it relates to to-go is that the food gets to where it's going in the same form that it was when it left the restaurant. Your chefs are creating masterpiece, unbelievable food, and to get it 30 minutes away and have it taste completely different, look completely different is a travesty. And so you have to think about, okay, how is this going to get there? What are my average travel times? How long is it going to take to get there? Do testing with your food, put it into the container, shake it up a bit, let it sit for 30 minutes. Think about, okay, is it still hot? Has it become soggy? What does it look like? Did tacos become taco salad? It's really, really important that it gets to where it's going in that same form. And to that point, you really have to drive a to-go menu. There are a lot of delicious food that's on restaurant menus today that don't travel well. It's super important that you pare down that menu and think about, okay, what are the items on this menu that I can sell profitably and make sure that the guest has a good experience when it gets to where it's going? Because in our experience, if the food gets to where it's going and it's not as delicious as if it were in the restaurant, the guest may not order to go again. They may not come in again. So there's a lot of risk involved with that. The second thing we're going to talk about is perceived value. Does the customer feel like the $15 burger is worth $15? Does it look, does it eat, does everything about it scream like I'm worth the money that I've invested here? We really want to make sure that things like to-go alcohol, for example, are packaged the right way such that instead of it just being a beer in a cup, that you're doing things like batch tequila or batch margaritas and for 4 or more people, or you're doing a craft old fashioned in a cool mason jar, and really driving that profitability but that guest experience as well. The third thing we're going to look at, brand awareness. So the comment I make all the time is nobody questions when the food gets to their house where the food came from, right? When Pizzeria Locale shows up at my door, I don't say, where did I order pizza from? I know where it came from. So you have to tell somebody when you're driving your brand awareness, something else about your restaurant. So if you look at the box on the slide, you'll see that they have reheat instructions on it. Now, I don't know anybody who's not finishing that pizza, but if you were, not to finish it, you know how to reheat it. And the next thing that they're going to do is they've just launched a new app, and so they're going to drive traffic to the app using their pizza box. Now, this doesn't have to be something that you spend a ton of money on. All you need to do is create some marketing that goes out the door with every single to-go order. And it's a call to action for the people that are going to be, whether they're going to reorder, how to interact with you on your website, on your app, or a call to action, come on back into the restaurant. Here's a coupon for a free kids meal or a drink or whatever the case may be. But really trying to drive that brand awareness and getting people understanding why you do what you do, why your food is so special, and really helping that revenue stream. And then the last thing, how do we control the budget? So what I've told a lot of our customers is you want to spend your money on things that make you money, and you want to try and save money on things that cost you money. So you really need to look at paring down the menu, driving profitable items, utilizing technology where it's available to you and where you can use that to leverage maybe some lack of staff that's happening right now, but really looking at, okay, if the things that are driving revenue and are plated meals and things going out the door, that's where we need to spend. And how do we control our budget on the back end? Because we're going from maybe 5 or 10% to go business to 75% to go business, especially as we come into the winter months. So really focused on where do I need to make the right investment and where can I save money on the back end? I really appreciate the opportunity to speak, and I'm going to flip it over to Michael.
Awesome.
Hey, Michael. Oh, there we go.
I was muted. Classic Zoom issues here. So my name is Michael. I'm sales team lead for Toast here in the Rocky Mountain region. Looking forward to talking to you guys a little bit about what we're seeing in the online ordering space and a few tips to optimize your online ordering. Drew brought up a ton of great points, and I think there's definitely some stats that you're going to see over and over again. And I do want to kind of just reiterate some of the why behind, kind of moving into this online ordering. And so this is some of the data that we are seeing from some of our customers at Toast is like, before COVID, you'll see this top line here is the dine-in and how it totally plummeted and almost inverted to off-premise versus on-premise. And then in about June, you started to see it switch back. But what's important here is you'll notice it's not nearly at the same levels as it was. And we're really expecting there to be kind of a 60-40 off-premise kind of split. And we think these actually will merge closer together through the colder months. And I think what's interesting is like the restaurants, there was a lot of restaurants that were not obviously prepared for anything like COVID, but to-go off-premise dining has been around for a long time. And so the people that were ready, they saw a huge lift because they were ready to absorb all of these customers. So there was a lot of like wing places that we work with, that they were having record months, of course, pizza, some of this other stuff, where those people that were natively versed in online ordering, actually it ended up being positive for them. No pun intended with coronavirus positives, but I would say the people that have been ready, like, really benefit from this. There's no reason to not be ready for any kind of like closure again. And it's really an opportunity to think like an entrepreneur. I know a lot of restaurateurs, had a lot of creative energy at the beginning days, and this is a brand new opportunity to be creative again. A lot of our customers or people we talk to will often say they only think that people are doing their online ordering through third-party apps and that they have to put themselves on these platforms like DoorDash or Grubhub. And while those can be powerful tools, we know that 50% of restaurant guests are ordering directly from a customer website this particular month and last month. And so for you guys to not have your own online ordering, you're leaving a ton of money on the table, and you're also handing off that experience to a third party where there's gonna be a lot of competitors and stuff like that. So consumers are going directly to websites to place your orders. So there's, again, no reason to not take advantage of those trends. Some of the specifics on some low-hanging fruit is Instagram is a huge channel for people to be placing their orders. And so if you don't have a link on your bio in Instagram, it's a miss. Illegal Pete's, they use a Bitly link, and I think the power of something like Bitly is you get analytics, and so you can have a unique link for Instagram that will show you how many people are visiting your website from your Instagram channel. So you can see the attribution, and it's really helpful. The other thing is Facebook Messenger. You can set up auto reply. We know that like labor is like very scarce, and there's like people are doing a ton of different things right now. So you don't want to have to pay someone to reply to people in a timely manner on Facebook Messenger. And so you can set up, if you go to the response assistance inside of your Facebook business page, you can set up an auto reply that will direct people right to your online ordering site, to place their orders. And then again, this seems obvious, but both Yelp and Google My Business Listings, people are not putting their online ordering links. So when people are searching for you on Google, it's just going to pop up your website, and they could skip a step and go right to your online ordering link through Google Business My Business Listings. The other thing, and this is something that Drew did a great job talking about, is this is an opportunity to rethink your menu, to rethink what would be good for your to-go off-premise dining. And we kind of use the 3 Ps as recommended tools to look at profitability for items, popularity, and then portability. The last thing is making it memorable. So the customers that we've seen to be the most successful are, again, being creative, and they're thinking about this experience as its own experience. And so they're doing things like handwritten notes in their orders. That can seem a little hard to scale, but it really does go a long way for some of our customers. We've seen people be creative and put pictures of their whole staff together and thank people for supporting them during this time. And people make that personal connection with your staff and with your restaurant and realize that them ordering from you is supporting this entire group of people. Stickers and decals has been another helpful tool of dropping those into go baskets or bins and bags. What's been helpful there is like you can give them a specific like I support this restaurant sticker that again like encourages them to blast out your brand, your logo to people, share it with other people, and again like reward them and incentivize them to continue to order from you. And then last but not least, and I think you're going to hear some really cool examples from Aaron here shortly, but this is again an opportunity to think like a startup. This is a blank slate for you guys to craft an experience for your guests where you get to bring in a lot of your learnings, a lot of the data that you have, and an optimized channel, going into the winter. So it's a really cool opportunity, even though it's scary for a lot of people. There's a lot to be done and experiments that can be run over the next couple months. So this is my information, and I'm looking forward to handing it off to Erin, and she has some great stories from her restaurant.
Thanks so much, Michael. I too could eat pizza for every meal, so glad we're on the same page there. Hello, everybody. Thanks for allowing me to speak a little bit about our projects at Frasca Hospitality Group. So we have 4 very different and unique restaurants and brands that when COVID happened and we closed, we just, like Michael said, we kind of had to throw everything on, to the wall and see what stuck. And I think we've certainly learned a lot along the way. So, I'll start with Frasca because I think it ties in a lot to what Drew and Michael have said is, Frasca Food and Wine is fine dining, 4 courses. When we closed, we also had a 6-course tasting menu. To go at that point to do a la carte was just not the experience that we knew we wanted to provide guests with. Beyond, the art of plating and and the smaller portions, we knew that we were going to have a hard time translating that experience to the guest at home. And did guests actually need fine dining in that moment? We also were looking at, we had furloughed our whole team, and with the first loan that we got, we brought back our group of 9 directors. So when we launched At Home With, this will be not this weekend, but next weekend will be the 26th week. So half a year of At Home With. We had 9 people to figure out what would translate really well. So we created this idea called At Home With. And if you're familiar with Blue Apron, where everything is kind of meased out for you, portioned, and it's very minimal cooking. So in the menu, there's maybe 1 or 2 things that you're actually cooking. So we came up with this kit. And then we also thought about Frasca as a brand of, the strong connection that we have with our guests. So we tried to figure out a great way of how to bring a little bit of us to the guests in a time where we couldn't be together. So we decided that creating video content to accompany the menu and the dinner kit was the route we wanted to take. So in every kit, you have your, 3-course menu. For 2, you have a bottle of wine, and then you have a video from Chef Eduardo, our culinary director, and then a wine chat with the winemaker, Bobby, who's one of our owners and a master sommelier, and Carlin, who is our wine director, and a wine chat. So, had we thought about this idea pre-COVID, it would have taken so much longer to get off the ground because I think we would have felt differently about putting ourselves out there in the way that we are currently. We film on an iPhone. No one here is a master in video editing or sound or anything like that. So what we really found was that, in the midst of this kind of insecure moment of like, it's not perfectly tied up and packaged, guests just really wanted to connect no matter what. So as we're thinking about to-go packaging and how to represent your brand well, it's not going to be perfect. Nobody has the budget to do these amazing, the way we want to package and make it look all tight. We just don't have the budget or the bandwidth right now. But what I have found is that there is a real profound graciousness amongst the guests who love you and love your restaurants and want to support you, and to be receptive to that. So that's kind of At Home With, and it's been a great success. We've had, we've certainly, Frasca is based on a small northeastern region in Italy, and 2 weeks ago we did Japanese gyoza kit, and we've done paella, and we've done we're doing cassoulet this week. So it's certainly a departure from our menu, and we found that our guests are great with it. And I think we've created, so much momentum that when we reopened, it allowed us to come back opening 4 days a week instead of 5. And so that has really replaced 20% of our revenue in a way that allows us to manage our labor really well. With Pizzeria Locale, which you saw a little bit of our packaging there, we, again, when we brought back our staff, we didn't bring back everybody at one time. We brought back first our group of directors, then we brought back all of our GMs and CDCs. So still working with a really lean team. Pizzeria Locale was a unique case study, if you will, because when we closed for COVID in March, we had about, I told Josh this, we had about 5 mini iPads on our host stand of all different delivery systems. And at 5 o'clock, you wanted to just like pull the plug on the power in the whole building because it was so intense. But when we reopened, we decided for us, we were not going to engage with third-party delivery systems. Part of that was our own personal belief just with safety and transportation of the product. But we also thought we had an opportunity to retrain the guests to do curbside pickup. And, you know, I certainly don't know what the numbers for COVID will always be skewed because you never know kind of what you would be leaving on the table, because hopefully this year never repeats itself. But, you know, what we did see is if I looked at 2019 numbers, when we had full-blown third-party deliveries, we're doing about 10% of takeout. And now that is about 30% of our revenue stream. So it's a really strong stream there. And we were able to introduce par-baked pizzas initially when we reopened. We felt like we wanted to give folks an opportunity that they could purchase their pizza ahead of time and finish it in the oven when they wanted to. Remember when we were fully shut down, I feel like it was all you could think about was what you were going to eat, where you were going to order from. So to have the opportunity to give guests a product that they could finish at home certainly worked out really well. And we have continued to expand to now a la carte and par-baked. But those are two examples of kind of how we got our programs off the ground running. You know, working with Toast has been great. And I feel like we all grew together in those few months, just learning the demand and what guests were looking for. So it's, you know, it's time to get scrappy. It will be time to get scrappy again. And yes, if anybody has any questions, I'm certainly happy to answer them. And I'm going to let Josh chime in on his programs too.
Hello. So can everybody hear me? Am I good? I am no expert on takeout. So we're not a Chipotle. I need to thank our staff who I put out this question to about lessons learned over the past 7 months. And I could go on for 20 minutes with what they gave me. Thank you, Laura. Thank you, Sonia and CRA. These seminars and webinars have been great. I've taken something from every one of them. So we operate 2 full-service restaurants at the moment, Steuben's Uptown and A Seat Serve right next door, and the Steuben's food truck. Vesta, we closed this summer after 23 years, and Steuben's Arvada. I'm lucky enough to own the real estate out there. We have no patio, so just giving myself a breather. Steuben's Uptown never closed. We had already had a lot of our systems in place. We had an exclusive relationship and still do with DoorDash. We did curbside delivery. So we were used to doing takeout, but takeout was about 11% of our sales pre-COVID, and we're at about 33% right now in takeout. Some of the benefits, and Erin mentioned it, of just having one delivery partner is just that management of multiple platforms, multiple iPads. It can just be overwhelming to deal with. And it depends on your concept, of course, and if you're dealing with in-house guests at the same time. But dealing with one gave us some competitive advantage with the fees, which is going to change now, some marketing opportunities, and just some regular open communication. I do encourage you, regardless of what platform you're on, to take a look at your keywords. What is it you're serving? What is it you're offering? type those in your demo, in your radius, and make sure that your restaurant pops up. So Steuben's, I mean, we might as well have been a fried chicken place during most of shutdown. Our fried chicken sales were like 75% of our sales. And then I went one day and just typed in fried chicken, and we were nowhere to be found on those first couple of pages. So make sure, just like any Google search and SEO, that your main items are coming up on those platforms. This was mentioned earlier, give that guest a reason to go to your website, put something in the bag that says, here's where to order from next time. Maybe there's some incentive associated with it. If you do work with a system like Toast, and we're getting ready to integrate Toast, and we built a new website at Steuben's with Bento Box, which also integrates, just make sure there as well that you get that same, you're driving people to those platforms, you're gonna save a lot of money. That's been mentioned already. We recently increased our takeout pricing by about 8%, or by 8%. 5% of that is to cover the cost of the takeout goods, and then we added a 3% surcharge across the restaurant, both for in-house dining and for takeout, for back-of-house wages. And we have not really heard peep about it. I think people ordering takeout, I was surprised. A few times I don't usually do delivery, but I wanted to test it out. I couldn't believe, especially if you're just doing delivery for one person, how expensive it can get when all the fees get added on. So my guess is that people are expecting to spend and just are not that price sensitive once they make that decision to do delivery. Have all your condiments prepackaged, dressings, sauces. We do ice cream pints and desserts and cupcakes. You don't want to be bothered with that in the midst of a rush. As mentioned earlier, don't be afraid to take items off. When we were fully shut down, we switched to a frozen French fry, but we do hand-cut French fries at Steuben's. So when we reopened to the public, we wanted to bring that back to the service. We've always done this with French fries at Steuben's. We wait till the delivery driver or the guest arrives to fire those fries. And yes, they wait another minute, minute and a half, but they're getting a fresh, hot French fry that might make the drive home without that frozen sugar coating on it. Think about tomorrow's meal. Can you double up that sale at the same time? Take a look at Chook Chicken. Take a look at their menu. Take a look at Levin Deli. They do a great job of offering things like chicken stock and vegetable stock and gravies and dressings and other things that you're already making and just need to be put, in a takeout container, and you can possibly upsell breakfast burritos for tomorrow morning, or something that you might serve that's frozen that they can do for a second meal that time. If any upsell that you can do is great. Which transitions me right to cocktails, which was great when that became an offering and an ability to do. I remember day one, we're like, what are we gonna put it in? What are we gonna put it in? We went, you'll recognize this cup. We went right with a plastic to-go cup that we had in-house. And I just looked at it and said, how can we serve our craft cocktails, out of plastic? It just doesn't feel right. And how do we encourage the guests not to just go buy a bottle of tequila and some grapefruit soda and make their cocktail at home? So we immediately launched our first series of mason jars. These ones say essential business, which was the big term back then. And we've since gone through about 8 or 9 different series, kind of like McDonald's back in the days. This is an ACE one, social distancing since 2012. Another Steuben's one, drinking in sweatpants. And they cost about $1.25. And we probably have about 4,000 of these mason jars around Denver and around our neighborhood and people's cabinets, hopefully. And they're being reminded of our brand and the enjoyment of the cocktail. We either offer with or without ice, depending on how far it has to travel. And they get to enjoy it out of glass, which I think when you're talking about a craft cocktail or a higher end cocktail, that's a big difference than drinking out of plastic. Of course, they could transfer their plastic to glass when they get home. So that's the cocktail thing. We do the same thing with the large format bottles. We use actual glass bottles with stoppers and put a branded sticker on it so that they know where it's coming from, and hopefully it gets reused again. So the main point I just want to focus on is how we stand out and how you might stand out with your takeout program. It's not, I don't think you just take your menu, and it's been mentioned, and just transfer it to takeout. You need to find an item. The key items are the ones that people do not usually cook or make for themselves at home, that might be affordable and could possibly feed the whole family. So fried chicken is the perfect example. You've seen fried chicken pop-ups happening all over town because it is just that. Not too many people make fried chicken at home. You can get the gravy, the mashed potatoes, the biscuits, the whole bang, and feed the whole family at once. And that's kind of our go-to at Steuben's. At Ace, it's been a little more challenging, but again, creating those experiences. We do Peking ducks on Thursdays and Sunday nights. I never thought Peking duck was something that would work to go. It took us a little while to figure out the packaging and the reheat instructions. And again, you need to print those out, take them home, try them in your oven and see if it works. And it totally worked. We got that crispy skin on the Peking duck. And it's an experience that people, if you're afraid to go out, you've been missing those special experiences to bring us to restaurants. So what kind of experience can you offer at home? We've done the dumplings. We have Chef Ta on video teaching how to make them, teaching how to cook them. We do a frozen dumpling at Ace. These are just a couple of ideas that stand out. Early on in COVID, there's a podcast I listen to regularly, Tim Ferriss's podcast. He had Nick Kokonis on, who runs Alinea in Chicago, which is a Michelin star restaurant. He's also the founder of Talk, another technology reservation platform. Take a listen to that podcast, and he talks about how they shifted at Alinea and started doing beef Wellingtons to go, and pre-ordered hundreds and hundreds a night. They were beating their sales pre-COVID on just doing one item, one specialty item that you might not do at home during that time period. It's also just a very motivating podcast about just dealing and pivoting and making the best of these circumstances. That is mostly it. I guess I'll wrap with just one practice. If you do still have in-house business going, and hopefully you do, don't be afraid to turn off your platforms. We turn off DoorDash regularly during brunch and almost on a nightly basis. With our expanded seating, we are pretty much at full capacity. And now we're doing more in takeout than we were doing, and that can sink the kitchen in no time. We need to hold on to that hospitality. You need to take care of the guests that are in your restaurant. We keep on, people can call and place orders or place orders in person. We just turn off that delivery and save ourselves that fee, at least till the kitchen catches up and we're taking care of those in-house guests. And then finally, I know this is all about takeout, but I think we all need to just spread that messaging. That's great what the city and the governor have done to allow us to keep these patios, but we got to convince people to dress warm, put their hats on, put their thermals on, maybe pretend they're up in ski country and eating in some cold weather. The sun is shining. It's a 12-month-a-year patio season here in Colorado. We just need to convince our guests not just to do takeout, but to come visit us. Thank you.
Thank you, Josh. Thank you, everyone. And I would remind people, if you have questions, go ahead and use the Q&A function. I saw one in, I know, Michael, that you answered it privately, but I would love to throw it out to the group. For Toast clients, who would you recommend we look at as the local gold standard for online ordering? Michael, I'd love for you to answer that live as well.
Taking myself off mute. There's a few that come to mind immediately. Josh mentioned one, Chook Chicken. They have done a great job. Again, offering products that are exclusive to their online ordering. Illegal Pete's, they spend a lot of time adding pictures, great descriptions, thinking about the modifiers that you want to be available online. You probably don't want every single modifier available online. It's going to slow down your kitchen. Yappa Sandwiches, another one that's just off the top of my head, and they had invested in it prior to COVID and had done a great job, so they didn't have to do a lot of reworking, and I think they benefited from having that channel already kind of built. But those are three examples that have kind of multiple locations, and you can kind of check out the local locations and see how they've done theirs.
Great. And then Aaron, I'm wondering if you could speak a little bit about delivery wine and what you guys have done in that. I think we've heard from a lot of people that cocktails have been successful, but they may have had a harder time getting wine sales going. Could you speak to that and what you all have done?
Sure. So, it's a tough, we had a tough time figuring out the right pricing for wine. Honestly, I think the retail markup and the restaurant markup is very different. And so, you know, what we didn't want to happen was people to see the wine that we were offering, quickly do a Google search and say, well, I can get this somewhere else for cheaper. So building it into dinner kits has worked really well for us. At Sunday Vinyl and Tavernetta and Frasca, we ran it for about 3 or 4 weeks. We did sommelier selects, and then it was a 3-pack of wine based on a theme or region or something like that every week. It was pretty successful. It didn't really move the needle as far as sales went and what the investment was. So we decided to essentially just get rid of that idea. But we did have a hard time kind of finding that sweet spot of the markup.
I'm not seeing a lot of questions come in. If you have questions, please go ahead and put those in the Q&A. But we will ask our panelists if they have any final thoughts that they want to share now that they've, you know, heard everybody else's presentations. If there's something else that you want to add or leave people with. And Drew, we'll circle back and start with you.
Perfect. Well, you know, it's really inspiring to hear Aaron and Josh talk about the things that they've done, and you know, a lot of it lined up with some of the best practices that I was able to go over. And you know, being a guy who lives downtown Denver and lives along 6th Ave with all these awesome local restaurants, our biggest thing at Western Paper has been, how do we support these folks in our communities that we go to regularly, and how can we figure out, you know, to Aaron's point, what's going to make the most sense for them, what's going to work within their budget. And it's been a lot of fun because the creativity has been unbelievable. So, you know, I'm lucky to be able to sit on this panel, lucky to work in the Denver and Colorado restaurant community. And in my 13 years at Western Paper, I've never had so much fun doing it. So thank you guys, and really inspirational to hear it. And thanks to the Restaurant Association for letting me participate.
Yep, and Drew, we did get a couple questions specifically for you while you're talking. So one, do you have recommendations on best packaging for keeping fries crispy or hot things hot? Anything people should be looking for there?
Oh, you know, I thought Josh kind of nailed it there with the dropping them, but there's a couple strategies that relate to fries specifically. There's some new technology on the market now that has to do with the way that airflow goes through a container. So some of it has to do with specific packaging, but others really it's about the operational. We would always suggest that you separate the fries from whatever else you're serving, whether it's in its own container and the main meal is also in its own container and they're in a bag together. But yeah, that's kind of the fries is always a tricky one. And you kind of have to think about, for your concept, is it more important that they're hot or is it more important that they're crisp? Personally, for me, it's more important that they're crisp. I don't really want a hot, soggy fry, but that's kind of the conversation we have almost on a daily basis with restaurateurs.
Great. And then I think this is for you and probably the restaurateurs on the menu, or on the panel here as well. But are people still concerned with using environmentally friendly to-go items?
So another comment that I always make is nobody ever sat down to eat a meal and said, wow, that was terrible, but the packaging was compostable, so I'm going to order that again. I think what's happening in 2020 is people are more concerned about getting their food to where it's going the right way. I don't know the statistics about city and county of Denver as it relates to how many green compostable trash bins are in people's alleys, but if you look at mine, there's not very many. And it's way more about right now. I'm seeing that it's more about that food integrity than it is the green piece. And also, what we're seeing is you can have eco-friendly items, whether it's recyclable or compostable, and still maintain that integrity. One of my favorites is the bird call guys printed on their fry container, "I'm compostable because why not?" And you know, that's kind of what we're seeing, at least from my perspective, as it relates to the environmentally friendly, is the people who it's in their values, it's in their core of their business to do it, then they're going to continue to do it. And there's ways to do it successfully. But there's a lot of customers out there that are like, no, it's all about the guest experience. And if this gets to where it's going, and because it was in the wrong container, the guest had a negative experience, I can't risk that.
Aaron or Josh, either of you want to weigh in on that at all? Happy to.
Sure. You know, I think Drew nailed most of it. That is part of our values. We do compost at the restaurants, and all of our takeout material is either recyclable or compostable. I think it's one or the other. But ultimately, you want to use the right container for that item. And for us also, I think it's nice when, if it is a certain type of dish like meatloaf, that you can throw that right into your oven and reheat it in that container versus having to transfer it. Now you got dishes to clean, and what was the idea of doing takeout if I transferred everything to dishes? So that is something we've taken into account too, is this possibly something that somebody's going to reheat, and is it in the right container for reheating in either an oven or a microwave? But in either case, those are still recyclable, at least, if not compostable as well.
Great. We have another question here. We're known for our nachos, but chips get soggy and don't travel well. Any suggestions?
To me?
Yeah, I think that'd be to you, Drew.
That nachos are certainly a tougher one to do. It also depends on what the ingredients are, right? If you're using a liquid type cheese versus you know, a shredded cheese or something along those lines, you could do it in a deconstructed version where there's a little bit of work involved from your guest, where you would send the ingredients and say, here's how you assemble it. That could be an option. Also, you know, there are some types of containers that would help it travel better, but you've got a lot at play there. You might, you know, do the base of the nachos and have the sour cream, the salsa, the guacamole, and whatever meat all packaged separately. So there's less work involved, but there's still some.
Right. Can someone touch on staffing for to-go and the challenges and solutions there? I think that'd be, maybe start with Josh, and then Aaron, if you could weigh in on that too, since you both mentioned that.
Sure, and that's a good question. We've actually made our takeout staff our highest hourly paid position in the front of the house, and they are now part of the tip pool as well, which has encouraged even servers and bartenders. Now everybody's kind of rotating through different positions in the restaurant, and I think you've seen a lot of restaurants change their pay structures and their tipping policy and things like that. So a takeout employee, it's a tough job. It takes a lot of organization. They are nonstop from the second they walk in, and they need to be competent as well. So they are getting paid. They are getting paid well, and better than they ever have in the past too. So that's the best I can say, is just treat them like you would a bartender or a server or any high level employee. It shouldn't be an afterthought at this point.
Yeah, I would echo what Josh said. We are, you know, it looks different at every restaurant. You know, our expo at Locale is currently running, basically quarterbacking all of the to-goes. We have a, you know, they're responsible for putting everything together, and our host team. So that's kind of our staffing structure. With Frasca, we are closed on Sundays, so we have a core team of, we call them central reservationists. So they're do a little bit more legwork as far as getting the video content to the guests, managing curbside pickup, managing the bags and all that stuff. So again, going back to the compensation piece, you know, we really had to kind of think about a little bit of a restructure there, but I think it's been going well. We haven't had to add anybody specifically to manage to-goes.
Great. Okay, we have another question here. It was mentioned that gravies, chicken stock, etc., had been offered to go. I'm curious to hear about any other items that people have been successfully selling in addition to meals and packages. I know, Josh, you touched on that. I think, though, anybody, including Michael, if you've seen anything from sort of the toast perspective that has been particularly successful, it'd be great if you could weigh in on that too.
Yeah, it's been like the people I've seen to be very successful is like there's people that have certain like their ranch is like one of their most popular add-ons as a side, and they're selling like large like bottles of their ranch dressings, like dressing sides. The things I've seen people try that maybe haven't gone as well is in like some merch items like shirts. I think people tried those early on and it wasn't quite the experience, that didn't land as well. So I think anything that your customers might already have a connection to that isn't traditionally like a menu item, or it's like really hard to get, like chicken stock, you know, it's very hard to make from scratch, and a lot of people could use that in a lot of different areas. So that's generally when it's been those types of items they've done well. But it's, yeah, just because you put it online doesn't mean it's always going to be successful or so.
And Aaron or Josh, do you have anything you want to add on that one?
At Tavernetta, we do pastas and sauces. Obviously, we have a pretty strong pasta program there. So you can purchase a la carte pasta that we've dried. We package pestos, bolognese, simple things like that. I can't remember who brought it up, but always pints of ice cream every time.
Great. One person asks, they're curious how, I think this is for the restaurateurs, how you are preparing for winter differently than you have for other winters when it comes to online ordering.
You know, it's different. We were still in winter when this all started, but the difference was we were one of a handful of restaurants that stayed open during the shutdown period. Now everybody's doing it and everybody's going after similar strategies. One thing we've learned, I think, as far as winter goes and the takeout items, and I'm trying to just keep it, not talking about tents and fire pits and all that stuff, but just in terms of the takeout, we're trying to develop one frozen item for each concept. One for Steuben's, one for Ace, that again is unique. You wouldn't probably make this at home. It's gonna work as a really easy reheat. It's a one-step reheat, whether it's a stew, you know, or something like that. And just focus on that one thing and try to get known for that one thing versus having a whole list of 10 frozen items and keeping your freezer stocked like that and competing with the grocery stores and Whole Foods and all the other restaurants that are offering it, but really trying to just come up with a signature for each restaurant.
Aaron, do you want to weigh in on that one?
That's a great question. You know, we don't have any hard and fast plans to change our current offerings. You know, for us, logistically, it will, the pickup piece, again, because we're not currently doing delivery, it may change during the winter. For us, the bigger piece to consider is the logistical pickup for the guest. You know, Tavernetta and Sunday Vinyl are set back from the street. So where to park, how to make it the most seamless for the guest. Curbside pickup, contactless delivery. What does that look like when it's snowing and it's really bad weather outside? So just considering like how to station our staff and position ourselves to execute the handoff, if you will, is kind of what's on our radar for this winter.
Great. And then last question here, how are to-go kits working compared to ready-to-eat items? So I know you guys you sort of talked about both, but could you make a comparison between those two?
You know, again, during shutdown, I think those were great items. Like Memorial Day, we did our lobster kit to go. Ace has done a Korean short rib to go, or meal kit to go. There's a lot of work that goes into that in terms of nailing down the instructions, the packaging, the social media, the marketing, the networking, to make all that work worthwhile to sell 100 of these to-go kits. I suppose if it's on the menu all the time and you've already figured all that out, it's different. But at the end of the day, I kind of asked, it was different when people were stuck at home and weren't going out to restaurants and weren't, and were looking for fun ways to do things. But at this point, I'd rather just pick up a lobster roll than pick up the bread, the butter, the lobster meat, and the mayonnaise, and the spices. So, we've kind of stayed away from too many of the meal kits at this point.
Go ahead, Erin. I think you wanted to add something there.
Sure. So for us, the meal kits, Frasca, because we started at that point, I think it's become a habit for our guests. We specifically chose Sunday knowing that, when things kind of returned back to normal, there was just a little bit more bandwidth seemingly on Sunday afternoons for people to spend some time in the kitchen and cook. To essentially back what Josh was saying is we, with Pizzeria Locale, we initially started with, we called it Pizza Night in America, and it was par-baked pizzas that you would finish at home, complete with, wine and things like that. And we still do sell those, but we've reverted to a la carte to go at that restaurant. Tavernetta, we do a pasta kit for 2 that still is selling really well. I think pasta is, something that everybody feels pretty empowered to make on their own. It's just, with the sauce, with a bottle of wine, with a little tiramisu at the end. I think packaging has worked pretty well there as well. And then at Sunday Vinyl, we really have just leaned on a la carte there. So every restaurant, I think is certainly different. I do like the concept of a meal kit. It feels like you're able to you can do a little bit larger of a format. You could do dinner for 2 or 4, and you're able to build in items to create a package that just is a little bit higher of a price point for your guests.
And then Michael, I would throw that question to you, see if there's anything that you would add from a best practices standpoint.
Yeah, I think meal kits became pretty popular early on. I think sort of what Josh hinted at is there was a novelty to it earlier on. And there are certain types of foods and certain types of cuisines that do better than other. Erin's spun on, people feel pretty confident on making pasta at home and having that experience. But if it's overly complicated, then people are going to, probably be intimidated, or they'll try it and they're like, yeah, this isn't what I thought it was. So that's what I've anecdotally seen. But there's some intuition on what would work and what would not work. But if you have a novel concept and you can package it and make an experience, and it is approachable, then definitely worth trying. I think this is, again, a time of innovation and a time to be creative and try a bunch of stuff. There's very little risk in adding something to your online ordering website, trying it out for a week, and seeing what people do and how they respond. There's no, I don't think you can do too many experiments, at least right now.
All right, great. And then this is really the last question, because I think then we have to wrap up. But I think this is for Josh and Erin. Are you guys thinking yet about Thanksgiving or holiday to-go options? And if so, what are your ideas?
In my mind, it's Christmas tomorrow, basically. That's the world that I'm currently operating in. Thanksgiving is a tough one because if you do the turkeys, you need significant refrigeration space. And you could rent a reefer truck, you could, sky's the limit, but that's really, we've thought about Thanksgiving a lot in the past few weeks, and the storage is just such an issue for us. So we're maybe pivoting a little bit from traditional Thanksgiving. I don't know what we're going to do. But Yes, also thinking about the holidays, and I will be curious to see, I mean, I think we're kind of thinking that people want luxury at home. So how to make it feel great. I do think with looking at, you know, for Denver, obviously with Mayor Hancock's kind of news about the potential of dialing back capacities a little bit, anticipating what's around the corner and what people will feel comfortable with. I think the time is right to try to introduce something for guests that will, again, bring a little bit of your restaurant into their home. We're all craving normalcy right now. We just so badly want to have a dining experience that is not the current dining experience. So trying to think really creatively about what is meaningful to guests, what is meaningful about your brand that you can send home with them, makes them feel, provides them a bit of normalcy for the evening.
We just abandoned our Thanksgiving plans. You know, we crushed it on Easter. We did a ham dinner for you know, you could just per person, and we crushed it. We sold hundreds. But again, that was at a different time when not everybody was doing the same thing. There's a lot of places, including places like Whole Foods and the Grow House, that are doing turkey dinners and selling turkey dinners. We were looking at just going to do a turkey breast and have it sliced. I think all the accompaniments and sides are a great way to go. Just sell gravy, sell stuffing, sell pies. And again, it depends on where your core business is at and what your capacity is and what your neighborhood looks like. And if you think people are going to go for it. But again, these all take a lot of work, coordination, PR and marketing for one day. So you just got to ask yourself, we're all stretched so thin right now, you know, is it worth the effort? And we chose to give ourselves a breather on Thanksgiving and just enjoy the holiday.
All right, well, thank you, everyone. Panelists, anybody have any final thoughts that you'd like to share? Not, I'm gonna go ahead and wrap it up. So thanks everyone for joining us, and stay tuned. Our next session, we're taking a break next week. Our next session will be October 28th. Thank you so much.